Hey folks, again, welcome back to the channel. Bobo here. So, on occasion, I would have the opportunity to fly with senior officers when I was a young captain, and I didn't mind it at all. I grew up in the Air Force, so I was very comfortable with them. Okay, that being said, that sets the stage for a couple flights I had with Colonel Lennie Griggs. Now, Lenny was a West Point graduate, Hudson High grad, and he was our DO, Director of Operations at McGuire at the time, and he was a big man, tall. You could say he was a bit overbearing, had a little bit of an ego, not quite as big as mine or Jesse Waters, but it was up there. At any rate, Lenny was a character. He drove around the base in a Volkswagen, and he would drive that Volkswagen on the flight line, lest anyone defy him, because he was the Director of Operations. Anyway, this one night, I was down at base ops about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I cannot remember the occasion, but it had to be for something, otherwise I would have been home. Anyway, I'm down there in base ops, and Colonel Dalton was in there. Now, Dalton and Griggs, Lenny, were classmates at the zoo, or at West Point. And Dalton looks over at Lenny. He says, "Lenny, what are you doing down here this hour?" He says, "There's nobody down here to see you." He says, "This won't help you make General." And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm cracking up. Anyway, that was the kind of bantering that went on behind the scenes, I guess. Anyway, I digress. So I had this one trip with Lenny. I flew with him a couple times, I think, and I always enjoyed flying with him. I had a good time with him. Anyway, like I said, he could be intimidating, but not on this trip. So he carried this briefcase. Now, I've never seen a pilot carry a briefcase. We've got our book bags, our brain bags, and so forth, but not a briefcase. I guess Lenny was the executive DO at the time. So he's carrying this briefcase around, and we decided to screw with him, the loadmaster and I, and it didn't take much to get the briefcase and figure out the combination. So I had the loadmaster put a tie-down chain in it. So he puts the tie-down chain in the briefcase, and true to form, halfway across the pond, we hear, "Loadmaster Aircraft Commander." "Yes, sir, go ahead." He says, "Would you bring up my briefcase for me?" "Yes, sir, no problem." So he brings up the briefcase, sets it on Lenny's lap. Lenny opens up, there's that damn tie-down chain. Thought it was going to knock him out of the seat. Anyway, that was one occasion. Another occasion we had, we had picked up some non-revs, space-available travelers somewhere down line, and we didn't have meals for them. It was just kind of an ugly situation, but didn't have meals. So between here and there, Lenny calls back, "Loadmaster, Aircraft Commander." "Go ahead, sir." He says, "I'm ready for my crew meal anytime you have a chance to bring it up." And Loadmaster says, "Well, sir," he says, "we have these passengers back here, and a couple of them were hungry, and I gave them your crew meal." That sent Lenny up into the roof, and then he brought his crew meal up after we got him calmed down. Anyway, I befriended him. I liked him. I liked his company. I could kind of sort through the bravado, and I can sit here and tell you I honestly liked the man. Now, we lived on base at the time, and I had this Irish setter, Sean the dog. And Sean was a beautiful dog. She just was a great dog. And I worked with her I put a lot of work into her, and she was a great dog for it. Anyway, I'd take her on walks, and we'd see Lenny, Colonel Griggs, and his wife out walking there in base housing. So you wind the clock ahead a little bit. I get orders to Southeast Asia. So this one afternoon, I'm out walking Sean, working with her, teaching her how to sit and stay and so forth, and she did very well at that. Anyway, Lenny says, "Bob, what are you going to do with your dog when you leave?" And I said, "Well, not quite sure yet." So I talked it over with my wife, and he said, let's back up here a minute, I got ahead of myself. He said, if you want someone to take her, my family would be would be more than thrilled to take her. So I talked it over with my wife, and we thought, you know what, I've got to go TDY to Little Rock and then to Hill before I even get to Southeast Asia. So we gave the dog to her, and he said, well, listen, he said, when you get back, you give me a call, and I'll see that you get her back. Well, come on, guys. I can't give a man a dog like that has young children that's going to bond with that dog. I couldn't do it. I said, well, sir, why don't we worry about that when the time comes? And he said, fair enough. So I gave the dog over to Lenny and his wife and family, and then I went to Southeast Asia. So I come back from Southeast Asia, and I'm a T-38 IP Advance. Well, we, at that time, decided we wanted to re-dog. And Lenny, at the time, had become the Director of Operations of Military Airlift Command, MAC. So I called him up, and I said, hey, Colonel Griggs, Bob Holliker here. He said, yeah, Bobby, what can I do for you? And I said, well, next time Sean has a puppy, I said, I'd like to get on the list for one of the pups. I said, Colonel Griggs, I can't in good conscience take that dog away from your family. That would not be right. He says, well, he said, she just had a litter of pups. He said, they're about 5 weeks old. I'll see to it that you get one. Okay. Hung up and just left it at that. Well, come 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm down in a flight room down in O-Flight, and I get a call. Captain Holliker, you're requested to come over to base operations. What the hell's that about? So I go over to base ops, walk in, and they said, sir, there's a C-141 inbound. The aircraft commander has requested that you meet it. Huh? So sure enough, I look out, and I see the C-141 come in and land, taxis over to base ops. The door opens, and out comes his loadmaster with a puppy. I'll be damned. So this little dog was scared as a devil, and he comes out and hands it to me. I fell in love with that puppy right then and there. Almost bringing tears to my eyes to tell you the story here. My gosh, Lenny kept his word. So I took the puppy home, and that's how we re-dogged. Now take the clock again, turn it ahead, and Lenny retires. He becomes the airport manager at Lambert Field. He went from the DO at Scott across the river to Lambert Field. And I'm flying with the airlines. So I got hired by TWA first. That's Travel with Allah. So I went from the Air Force. In October, I got hired by TWA, so I go to St. Louis for training. Well, I'm in the St. Louis airport, and they had this huge mural on the wall. And it was a mural of aviation. Well, that just caught my attention right away. So I sit there and start at the beginning, start working my way down this mural. And I see Orville and Wilbur Wright and Curtis. They have these paintings, and these guys are all in these ovals, these vertical ovals, if you will, and they have their pictures. And I see these aviation pioneers, like I said, Orville and Wilbur. And then I see Curtis is in there, and it kind of, the Wright isn't there, not Wright. Anyway, so see Jimmy Doolittle, Lindbergh, and then you're coming through the ranks. Dick Bong is in there, Chuck Yeager, and a couple others. And I get down toward the end of the murals, and there's Lenny Griggs. You got to be shitting me. Lenny. You got all these infamous American aviators, and you get down to the end, and there's Lenny. That just cracked me up. And he's in civilian clothes. He's got his handlebar mustache and so forth. And there's Lenny Griggs. Well, go figure. Anyway, I laughed about it, went upstairs, went into his office. I said, you got to be kidding me. The mural? It didn't faze him a bit. I should have thought, I guess, in retrospect, hey, can you put me on there? But nah, that wouldn't work. Anyway, I chatted with him every now and then as when I'd go through St. Louis. I always enjoyed talking to him. Then one day, I'm in the airplane, we're getting ready to go, and talking to this flight attendant. Well, it turns out it's one of his daughters. I'll be damned. And I'd never met her. No, I'd never met her. She would have been just a child when I gave her the dog, and I told her about the dog, and her eyes lit up, and oh man, that made it all worth it. I knew I'd made the right choice. Well, I knew it back then too, but she just had such fond memories of that puppy, that dog. So years go by, and I'm getting to the end of this. Just bear with me. So it'll go on a little longer than what I anticipated. At any rate, one of my crew chiefs, Chris, we have stayed friends since I retired in 1988. And Chris, when he retired, became a physical therapist. So I get a call from Chris this one day. He says, "Hey, Bob," he says, "you remember Colonel Griggs?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I remember him." He says, "I'm working with him in therapy these days." And he says, "We're really enjoying playing Who We Knew and so forth." And I thought, "Oh, damn." I said, "Well, please tell Colonel Griggs I said hi and wish him the very best." The point I want to make with this is I love it when these associations just kind of intertwine and come back to each other. Chris was my crew chief on my last flight in the Air Force, and you just heard about my association with Colonel Griggs. And here, these two very fine people, in my mind, come together here, and it's just heartwarming, and one of those treasures that I hope you see. It's a heartfelt treasure. Anyway, thanks for stopping in, and we'll talk to you again soon.